The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Gawdat, the entrepreneur, author, and former chief business officer at Google X. You spent 30 years working in the heart of the technology industry with some of the biggest organizations on the planet, including IBM, Microsoft, and finally at Google's moonshot factory of innovation. As an entrepreneur, you have co-founded over 20 businesses and served on the board of a number of technology platforms. After turning your attention to researching the key to happiness, you wrote the best-selling book, Solve for Happy, Engineer Your Path to Joy. Your second book, Scary Smart, The Future of Artificial Intelligence and How You Can Save Our World, breaks down our future with AI. Ultimately, you believe that artificial intelligence is a massive and immediate threat to life on this planet, and that this emergency must be addressed or the consequences could be devastating. Mo, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you before the show as well, the side of you that so many of our viewers don't get to see.
I appreciate that. It's nice to see you here. I think it's 6 years since you first came on and we were talking about happiness.
Yes.
Who would have known we would have been in this place? And
Yes.
It'd be very interesting to see where we are 6 years from now. I think a lot is going to change.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting thought experiment, actually.
It is. That would be 2029, wouldn't it? Strangely enough.
2029 is a very key number, as a matter of fact. I normally tell everyone that asks me that by 2035 to 2037, it would be very difficult to even relate to our life today. Life will be so different in so many ways that you wouldn't even imagine that we live this way.
As in us looking back to like caveman days or looking back to say 1800s? Unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable. I mean, it's unrecognizable possibly in the better or possibly in the worse, and we don't actually know. And I tend to believe that AI and technology has always surprised us on the upside. So you would say 2035, 2037, but as we could see, you know, intelligences of the magnitude of ChatGPT today, we didn't expect that early on. You know, intelligences like AlphaGo beating, Lee and becoming the world champion, we literally expected would take 10 years longer. And those kinds of intelligences, if you want to be pessimistic, you would say, okay, they're going to take longer. But we've constantly been surprised, constantly. It always happened earlier. So maybe 2029 would be that year. I think society will take time to adjust and react and break down in many interesting ways. But by 2029, we will be in the heart of it for sure.
You know what surprised me the most, Mo, is of all the people I've spoken to on AI and listened to about AI, not a single one has said, yeah, I expected this right about now. Every single one, and these are the top people in the world, from Jeffrey Hinton of Google, that's the man, the godfather, to everybody across the spectrum, everyone has said, I'm surprised. That surprises me.
Everyone but Ray Kurzweil.
Okay.
Ray has taught all of us in his work about we all know the technology acceleration curve. The most well-known example of it is Moore's law, right? And I love Ray Kurzweil's example when he was trying to explain the technology acceleration curve. Basically, if you take Moore's law, that technology will double in power every compute power will double every 18 months for the same cost, right? The thing is that that doubling function is so much more deceiving to the human brain than what we know as progress. So the doubling function, if you assume that something doubles from 1 to 2, so it adds 1 in power, then the next doubling, it's adding 2, which is everything it's ever created. The next time, it's adding 4, which is everything it's ever created. So if you think that we moved on artificial intelligence from 0 to 100 units of intelligence, I always share, it's not very accurate, but we think that ChatGPT's IQ is 155, right? One doubling, by the way, Einstein is 160, just so that we keep that in perspective. One doubling, and it's almost double the intelligence of one of the smartest people that ever existed. The next doubling, it adds 2 more Einsteins. The next doubling, it adds 4 more Einsteins, right? And if you and I, who have studied physics, would look at Einstein and say, man, that's intelligent, it becomes almost impossible to comprehend what 8-time Einstein could be, let alone a few more doublings, and now we're talking tens of thousands of times human intelligence, right? So it's from one side inevitable, which is really important to note, that we are on that path. There is no stopping that path. And on the other side, just very intriguing, there will be a point in time where we will be comparable to an ant on a sheet of paper trying to understand cosmology, right? This is our intelligence compared to their intelligence.
And it's impossible for us to even understand that, because we've never really been around intelligent beings more so than us. Been around computers that can do computing things.
That's not intelligent at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, back to this concept of a singularity, which means we don't have any reference point for what happens on the other side of that.
Yeah. So it's basically, there is a point which most of us identify as the introduction of the first AGI, artificial general intelligence. So artificial intelligence today still is confined to a task, right? You get an Instagram recommendation engine, and it will be very good at recommending videos, but it can't drive a car. And you get a self-driving car intelligence that can drive cars, but doesn't do surveillance, right? Or security. So basically, each of them is very good at one task. What good is the AlphaGo intelligence that can win a game of Go if we were asking it to summarize the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? There will be a moment in our very near future, I would say, where we will develop an artificial general intelligence, an intelligence that's capable of doing all human functions, all human intelligent functions, better than humanity. When that moment happens, the rules of the game change. It's almost as if you're in a tennis court, and suddenly the referee says, okay, now we've turned this into a game of rugby, right? What do you do with the racket? What do you do with this? The rules change so much that even if you're the world champion in tennis, you're not very good at doing anything with this at all. It's very, very difficult to predict how that will work out. And I think we're so fast approaching that moment to a point where I tend to believe that we're talking 2-3 years. Not to get to AGI, but to get to the point where it becomes useless for us to try to regulate the AGI that's about to come.
Okay, explain that last part, useless to try to regulate it.
Yeah, so most of us, by the way, who worked in artificial intelligence, we celebrated the capabilities and the possibilities that AI can bring to us. The challenge is we've never imagined what that world would look like. We just imagined a world where we can do so much better than Google because we have such much, so much more intelligence at our disposal. We can solve all of our world's problems. And we still, I'm still optimistic that this will be, I call it the fourth inevitable, that, eventually we will end up in that place. that moment between now and there, I think my biggest fear, Brian, is that humans will use that abundant intelligence in ways that are not pro-humanity, right? And humans will take that in a direction that is pro the systems that humanity instilled in place, which are mostly about, shifting power and wealth. It's about, really becoming stronger or better or richer than the other guy. Now, that stage requires a regulation that regulates humans. We need, in the immediate sense of taking action right now, we need to be able to regulate humans so that humans don't introduce AI in the world that shifts and redesigns the fabric of human society in ways that are damaging to society. Beyond that, there is a point at which you need to regulate the AI itself, where most of the power will be in the hands of that AI. Now, as computer scientists, we used to say, okay, so we're going to solve something called the control problem. And the control problem is, we will just put the AI in a box so that it behaves within certain parameters. Or, we will tripwire it. So if it, crosses a certain point, we disconnect it, and so on. And there are many, many very interesting debates around whether that from a tech point of view can work or not. I try to leave all of those debates behind, and I question and I say, how can you regulate something that's 10 million times smarter than you, or 1 billion times smarter than you? Like, yeah, you create a box, oh, you intelligent little human, you're so clever, you created the box. And then the AI will look at it and say, oh, vulnerability here, hole there, and we've seen examples of that. We've seen ChatGPT reach out to, crowdsourced people and basically say, okay, can you please click on that CAPTCHA for me? This is a very famous, article. Basically, AI cannot, when you have those little CAPTCHAs on screen that says this, click here if you're not a robot. It goes to a human and says, can you please click on that for me? And the human asked and said, why are you a robot? And ChatGPT answered and said, no, I'm just visually impaired, and it would help me if a human does that for me, right? And so they will find a way to get to their target in ways that are using intelligence. And interestingly, their intelligence, as we speak, even though it's not an AGI yet, is very capable of hacking the human operating system, which is communication and knowledge. They can tell us to do things. They can convince us to do things. The point beyond which they have moved to AGI, and they are so much more intelligent than us. You can get all of the governments in the world to get together and say, finally, we're going to leave all of our differences behind. Finally, we're all going to sing Kumbaya and then go out and regulate AI. Good luck with that. They've surpassed us. They're now the masters. They're now going to regulate us. And that moment, in my personal view, I don't want to say has already passed, but it's very, very fast approaching.
And it's not much we can do to slow that down.
There has been many attempts. So there is, so there has been quite a few AI executives and scientists, those who have been, exposed to AI, that have attempted to slow things down, right? There were also many that were just simply saying, invest in AI safety, invest in AI ethics as much as you're investing in AI progress, okay? And I don't know, if the numbers are accurate. I heard Max Tegmark once said that around 95% of the investment went into progress and 5% into safety. And so the imbalance basically meant that AI safety lagged behind, right? And we're progressing so fast, and we're being surprised constantly by the progress that we make, that you get to a point where you suddenly realize that this is getting out of control, okay? And you suddenly realize that it's getting out of control to the point where you have to start screaming. You have to start saying, hey, let's start to slow this down, or even pause it for a little while. And there was the open letter. Max was part of it. Elon Musk was part of it. And many who said, let's just pause for 6 months and within those 6 months we can just figure things out. But that's what I wrote in Scary Smart as the first inevitable. In the first inevitable, I openly said there will be no stopping AI. Okay, AI has already happened and it will keep progressing, not because of any technological bias in that. It's not AI itself that will make sure that we don't stop it. It's the human system that we've built in place where it's a prisoner's dilemma. If China develops AI, America needs to develop AI. If Alphabet develops AI, Google's company, then Meta, Facebook needs to develop AI, and that kind of competitive landscape is not an AI issue. It's an issue on defense. It's an issue on every kind of hunger for resource or power or wealth, and as a result, of course, you could see the immediate response of Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, to the open letter is, no, I can't stop. You cannot guarantee for me that everyone else will stop. So why would you ask me to stop and then my company will be vulnerable? And you can't blame him. Sundar is an amazing human, okay? You can't blame him. Sundar is basically saying, I am tasked in front of my shareholders with protecting my company's interest. Now, if, for example, the internet had changed from IP5 to IP6, it's my responsibility to make sure that Google is ready for IP6. Now, the world is changing from traditional computing to AI. It's my responsibility that Google leads in AI. And if nobody can guarantee for me that everyone else will stop, I cannot stop. That prisoner's dilemma is the first inevitable. And the first inevitable will tell you that AI will continue to progress, and it will continue to progress at a pace that is faster and faster and faster by the minute. If you imagine the explosion of AI investments that happened between the time ChatGPT showed in front of people finally, and today, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. So the trend is not only continuing, it's accelerating.
Yeah, and Max Tegmark calls it Moloch, right?
This race to the bottom analogy, yeah.
Yeah, it's this concept, that's I guess been around for quite some time, that prisoner's dilemma, that we race to the bottom. And again, with Google, you saw it a bit, whereas the Google Bard initial demonstration, was a PR kind of a nightmare. The stock price faltered, but when they came back, it was a better version, and it was now connected to the live internet. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like they took one more step closer to the bottom, to stay competitive. Exactly. Maybe that's a simplistic way of looking at that, but that was the way I try to explain it to my students, is that now they said, okay, we're going to see you and raise you because we have $1 trillion of market cap or $2 trillion that we have to protect. And like you said, if Sundar doesn't do it, they'll get rid of him and someone else will do that.
Exactly the challenge we're at. And I think that the truth of the matter is that, as you rightly said, I'll see you and raise you is what's happening today. It is the gold rush all over again. It is the internet bubble all over again. And yes, there will be fallout in the process, but in my personal view, we're just going to see more and more and more. There's no stopping it.
Some people do equate this to the dot-com bubble. You saw that. I was the CFO of a dot-com startup in New York City at the ripe age of 27. And we raised $15 million. It was called luxuryfinder.com. You could buy like a jet on our website. It was a bunch of wealthy people in New York and the Hamptons that put money in, like Leon Black and all these people. And I was just watching it happen. It went up and then it crashed down. And for a couple of years, you couldn't say the word tech in New York City or someone would want to punch you in the face. 3 years later, Google kind of was started and it came about. And I remember the days. I remember the madness going on. I remember all my buddies in finance like telling me to stop talking about the internet, and I was saying this is Columbus in the New World, etc. How does AI differ from that?
It doesn't at all. I mean, remember, at the end of the day, if you remember all of the, Commerce One and eGrocer and all of those, I don't remember even the names anymore, who disappeared completely, but the internet continued. Right? And the internet continued at a pace that most people didn't understand, because at the time they thought that the dot-com bubble was, the disappearance of the money was the disappearance of the internet. It was the redistribution of the money that was the rise of the internet. And you'll see that here as well. I mean, I have so many investment firms asking my advice on where to invest in AI, and I can attempt to look intelligent, but anywhere you will invest, you'll make money. So, right, you will lose a good chunk of your portfolio on startups that will fail, and there is a criteria to minimize that chunk, right? But if you invest in a sector at large, AI in healthcare, you will grow. It's just inevitable. It's money flow, money is coming in, and the sector will continue to grow. The question really that I think humanity has never ever answered is the fact that we can do it does not necessitate that we should do it. And I think with artificial intelligence specifically, I think humanity should stop and ask, do we need this? Because we literally are handing over our only distinct advantage as a flimsy biological being, as a species. We're handing that over within years, I'm not saying tens of years, and I know there are very varying views on this, and so I'm putting my neck on the line and saying within years, probably before 2029, we'll see an AGI that surpasses human intelligence.
All right, so let's look at the timeline according to Gawdat, just roughly here. You said by 2035, 37, we will be in a world that is just completely unrecognizable to what we are now. Or they would look back at us and they wouldn't even recognize who we are, how we live.
They will look back at us with a lot of envy or a lot of surprise.
Right. And backing it up to them, I think Ben Goertzel called it the pre-singularity. And when he described this to me, very similar to you, he said that's when, he said bad people will use AI to do bad things and co-opt it for their means, which, I mean, turn on the news. Like you said, power, whether it's China or the US or Russia or Ukraine, and wealth, right? This is how we exert, this is what we do as humans. So it's used, co-opted by those organizations until we hit an AGI level, and then it's potentially out of our control.
It's certainly
out of our control. And that's why you go into the book, and that's, I guess, one of your inevitables, is that it's certainly out of control. And it's interesting, Mo, because I have a bunch of students, and I get to teach them on a regular basis, and I get a random cross-section of people sometimes. And I say, when I go to the inevitable thing, a lot of people look at me funny, and then I say, okay, in the next 100 years, will these things be 10 or 100 times smarter than you? And almost everyone will raise their hand. I said, look where the mobile phone was. Well, there was no mobile phone 20 years ago. Look at it now. And most of them, people will be like, yeah, okay, you're probably right. I guess it is inevitable. But it's really hard to get into this ego-protected shell.
And I don't blame anyone for that. You have to have lived inside the machine to be able to understand how the machine functions. Right. If you look at the machine of technology from the outside, it's quite deceiving, because there is the technology adoption curve, there is the technology acceleration curve, that exponential curve, and there is a chart that I normally present that in my mind is my view of tech, which is the technology development curve. And the technology development curve is very deceiving. If you look at artificial intelligence, it looks like a hockey stick, only lying on its side, really. So basically, if you look at artificial intelligence, we started talking about AI in 1956. I mean, we coined the term Alan Turing and the Dartmouth experiment, and the whole idea of we can make machines that are intelligent has been part of human imagination since forever, but we thought that the computer will get us there in 1956. Between 1956 and the year 2000 almost, nothing. We could only create a few stupid simulations that are really fake, and they're not intelligent in any way. It was the turn of the century. So everything we see today is the result of 20 years, right? The turn of the century with deep learning, we started to create intelligences that are, primitive, but they were actually intelligences, okay? And the difference, let me explain this for everyone. The difference is, until we started to code deep learning and machine learning and so on, computers appeared to be very intelligent, but they were simply repeating my intelligence as a developer. So I would solve the problem first, and then they'll tell the computer to do it 1,000,000 times faster, right? Okay? Without me solving it, and if I solved it wrong, the computer will do it 1,000,000 times faster, wrong, right? So there was no solution offered by the computer, there was just execution. When we went into deep learning, we started to say, okay, look, we don't know how to solve the problem. Can you solve it yourself, right? And there was an explosion, you know, Jeffrey would talk about that openly, that the challenge has been in the early years, even until 2008, for example, when we started to work at Google X on self-driving cars, there wasn't enough data to teach those machines. There wasn't really enough compute. Remember, 2008 was just over there, like it was just a few years ago. Huh? And between then and now, the explosion of the amount of data, the explosion in the amount of in the availability of compute power, allows us to do what we couldn't do then, even though we had found the breakthrough. And my breakthrough moment was when one of my dearest friends he was the country manager of Google Saudi at the time, presented to me something that we used to call the cked paper. Okay. And the cked paper, I think, was the turning point in my mind that we figured it out. So this was a white paper that Google published, if I remember correctly, 2009. And we had used some of Google's spare compute power to go and watch YouTube. Simply, we didn't tell them what to look for. We just said, go and watch YouTube. So the machine would cut YouTube videos into 10 frames per second, take all of those 10 frames and try to layer them on top of each other in a deep, you know, learning network, in a deep neural network, and attempt to find similarities between them. Okay? That's all the machine did. It was really trying to find similarities, patterns that are reoccurring. We didn't know what those patterns were going to be. The machine could have come back and said, you know, there is more red than blue on YouTube. What it came back with is, it basically said, I found something. And we couldn't even know what it found. We had to write more code to tell it to explain to us what it found. And it had found a cat. Okay? YouTube. There you go. You know, there is Brian Rose and cats.
Before us, there were cats.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So the cat video.
Yeah. So basically, tons of cat videos.
Yeah.
But what the machine found was not like a portrait of a cat, and so any other cat that is portrait would be found. No, it found out what catness is, what being a cat is all about. You know, that lazy entitlement cuteness, right? So basically, when we said, okay, call this a cat, the machine went out and found every cat on YouTube, then every dog on YouTube, then every nudity on YouTube, then every word on YouTube, then every Ferrari on YouTube. And you can actually do that today. You can say, you know, you can go to Google image search and say, find me pictures of yellow Ferraris, okay? It will find you pictures of yellow Ferraris that don't have the words yellow Ferrari in the title. It understands what a yellow Ferrari is, right? At that moment, we used to call it unprompted AI. At that moment, we had found the breakthrough. So that hockey stick of the technology development curve moved from this very, very, very long and boring, no progress, from 1956 to, say, 2006. And suddenly it goes through the roof, like literally almost vertical.
Because you had the data and the computing power?
Because you had the breakthrough, the tech breakthrough. And now you pour engineering.
Neural net, data, computer power, all at the right
Exactly.
time. And you guys noticed it. So you said, this is
and
it.
Everyone, and I don't claim that Google has always been more advanced. I tend to believe, but everyone found it. And so, you know, at the time, DeepMind, an incredible organization here in the UK, you know, Demis, the CEO, is an amazing human being. Google had to acquire them because they were so far ahead in, you know, understanding how to teach computers how to have neural networks, how to have a structure that's similar to the brain structure by having machines play Atari games, okay? And here's the interesting thing. When, I don't remember the exact date, I think it must have been 2014, 2015, don't quote me on this, but the first time we acquired DeepMind, Demis comes to our Golden Circle meeting, so the VPs and senior VPs, and he presents. And if I recall correctly, do you know the Atari game that was called Breakout? So
Yeah.
bricks on top.
Yeah, I used to play it.
And he said, if I remember correctly, he said, so we trained the machine for a few days, three to 4 days, 3 to 4 hours to play. But remember, these are highly parallel machines, so there are, many of them playing at the same time and teaching each other. And it started to hit the ball. It played like a child. A few more hours, and it started to never miss the ball. A few more hours, and it started to develop strategy. So it would poke a hole in the corner of the wall, and then send the ball up there. And the thing is, we never told it what to do. We just told it, here's the controller, maximize that score. That's it, right? And it plays and plays and plays and plays. Now with the ability to, now that you found the breakthrough, and the breakthrough says, create patterns, layers of observations of patterns, and just from those patterns develop intelligence. Very similar to how a child learns, right? Okay? Once we found that, it was just a matter of time. And understand, when you're inside the factory, I knew it was, of course you sort of like downtone your enthusiasm. So we said maybe 20, 30 years and we'll have very intelligent machines. And just breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And here we are having wonderful conversations with ChatGPT and with Bard, and we're just completely controlled by machines that are recommending videos for us and content for us. We've passed the Turing test, so it's actually extremely difficult to know the difference between a machine and a human on the internet anymore. And there we are. And as that chart is literally almost vertical, we still don't talk about it. We talk about Russia and Ukraine, we talk about economic challenges, we talk about all important problems. But this is the one. This is the one that's going to define humanity without our involvement at all within 2 to 3 years' time.
We're 6 months past the ChatGPT moment. Are you still surprised that we're not talking about it more, or is this standard playbook for humanity?
It is sadly standard playbook for humanity.
Does part of us not want to see it?
So look, I attempted to help myself understand why is it that we continue to develop it on one side, and why is it that we're not talking about it on the other side. So the latter is easy. The latter is because there are higher priorities. Again, the system that we created from a political point of view does not favor disasters where the politician is going to fail. Okay? Remember, the task we have at hand is not to halt AI in China alone, or in America alone, or in Russia alone. Okay? The task we have at hand is to say, look, everyone needs to get together, understand the magnitude, the gravity of the issue that's facing us, and put humanity higher than our individual targets for a minute. Okay? It's an Oppenheimer moment, if in a way. It's a nuclear treaty moment. There is a question of, if we knew that nuclear power was going to lead to that kind of Cold War, and the threat of a nuclear war even now in 2022, 2023, would we have benefited from not doing it in the first place? Okay? Could we have gotten together and said, yeah, I know it gives one of us an advantage. Is there another way we can negotiate that advantage? Interestingly, however, it is also against the system for us to slow this down. Why? Because sadly, politicians are actually paid to create that advantage. Sadly, business people are actually paid to create that competitive advantage. So it's not in the natural system of humanity that we've built today to prioritize all of us over my own personal gain. Okay? So this is why we're not going to stop. It's very clear. We're not talking about it, because if we bring it up, then the political system needs to respond.
Okay.
Okay. Now I have to admit, Prime Minister of the UK brought it up. New Zealand is talking about it, and so on. And it will become more and more prevalent, Sadly, however, we need a COVID moment for everyone to react. And sadly, however, I fear that we will react like we reacted to COVID. So think, understand this. Huh? Everyone who understood, viral pandemics told everyone in government that we were going to hit a pandemic. Okay, it was inevitable. We had warnings in SARS and in swine flu and so many of them, and yet until the threat was here, literally right in front of your eyes, governments were like, no, we have other priorities. This is not on the agenda. Think about climate change. I mean, how much more obvious does it have to be until the threat is here and something massive happens? Governments are not going to react. They have other priorities. The problem is when they react, how will they react? Okay? And I think COVID is a fantastic example of what to expect, because had we stopped at patient zero, oh, hold on, there is a patient zero, let's stop the spread of this, we wouldn't have ever heard of COVID. Right. Had we stopped at patient 100, it would have been contained reasonably. But when we got to patient several thousand, what did governments do? They started to point fingers. Oh, no, it came from China, it came from this. What difference does it make? Humanity at large is facing a threat that requires for us to get together for a minute, solve it, literally by halting travel for 3 weeks, okay? And managing the pockets where it continues to appear, and then let's do our political fights later. We didn't do that, okay? And then, of course, the fourth stage is really the worst, where suddenly politicians looked at it and said, holy shit, this is big, and panicked. And when they panicked, they hurt other parts of the economy, they hurt our well-being and so on, by over-responding to something they could have responded to much better, much more efficiently earlier. This, I think, is going to be we're going to wait for a disaster moment on AI, and then suddenly governments will go like, whoops, can we get together and talk about this?
Okay, and that's why you tell me you're not worried about the computers, you're worried about the humans.
Humans, it's all humans.
Because they're going to make poor, irrational, emotional decisions.
You hosted Hugo Gawdat here.
Yeah.
Incredible thinker on the topic, even though quite
I'm fascinated by Hugo.
Quite scary. But that's the problem. The problem is, once again, we will polarize. Right. So suddenly there will be us versus the machines, which is the absolute worst decision you can make when you know for a fact that the machines are going to be the masters.
Right. So just to back it up, it's Professor Hugo Gawdat. I think you originally saw him in that film called Singularity or Bust, where he was in there with Dr. Ben Goertzel, who we've had on the show as well. And in that movie, which I think you quote in your book, Scary Smart, which everyone needs to get a copy, and I listened to it on Audible. It was amazing, and Mo recites it in his beautiful voice. And Hugo wrote a book called The Ardalek War, and he has kind of gameplayed this in his mind for many years, for decades, and he believes in the future there will be two groups. I think it's the Cosmos and the Ardaleks. The Cosmos believe in humans, and I think the Ardaleks believe in building these AIs. And he says it will get to a point where they will be two groups, and there will be a giga-death, is what he says, 1 billion people dying as these two groups fight it out for the winner. Yeah. When the winner is obvious to you will be the Ardalek group anyways.
Yeah, I think that you're starting to see that already on social media. We're not killing each other, but I can guarantee you this video will have endless controversy and conversation around, okay, is this happening? Is this not happening? Is this good for us? Is this not good for us? Because at the end of the day, we're humans. We have different points of view, and if we have different points of view, we have different convictions, and we are so well trained that if what you're saying is not what I'm convinced of, then you're an idiot. Right. And so it's a tiny bit of a war when you really think about it, but it can grow quite big. It can grow quite big, again, not in the form of a war, but just wait 5-6 years when we get massive job losses to artificial intelligence, and it becomes a clear war. If someone took your job, remember how black cab drivers here in the UK responded to Uber.
Yeah.
Okay, do that at a massive scale, and it is a complete redesign of the fabric of our society.
Look at the way that, say, World War I started. I mean, it was a shot fired in a random country that really didn't really have a lot to do with what happened afterwards, but it was an event that really lit up everything, and before you know it, everyone's choosing sides, and you've got a massive world war between superpowers. This event could be a variety of things. It could be job losses, or it could be a computer kills a human in some weird isolated incident. Or it could be a variety of things, right? And mistakes will happen, which is one of the things you put in your book.
So we have to think about this, and we have to understand that while you and I are spending this hour or couple of hours chatting about this, there is someone investing hundreds of millions of dollars to create a criminal AI, right? Because if you want to make money, you rob the bank, right? If you're a criminal, you go to where the money is. Now, if I told you that the biggest power on planet Earth is intelligence, and now you have access to it by writing a few lines of code, okay? A lot of people are investing in that, which raises a very interesting question, because the only way to protect against a super intelligent criminal is to have a super intelligent policeman, which again is back to the first inevitable. Huh? So we can't halt the progress of AI if we cannot ensure that there is no criminal attempts to gain superpower with AI. And the problem is that element of trust. Can we include criminals in this conversation and say, hey, keep robbing banks, just don't create a super intelligent criminal, okay? That's not going to happen. So that continuation of development of a super intelligent virus, a super intelligent hacker, a super intelligent AI of some sort that will do something that can gain its developer a lot of money, is happening as we speak. And I believe that patient zero will be one of those attacks, right? Will be something that disrupts, sadly, only our economy is what we care about. So politicians will respond when economy is disrupted enough, but it's inevitable.
What do you think that'll look like, honestly? And when do you think it'll happen?
I think it will look something like 2008. The economic crisis, the subprime mortgage crisis, the surprise, the panic, the fallout.
Right. Stock market's off 25, 30%,
the
recession, massive job losses.
Yeah.
And then what will have caused that? Will we even know it's AI related?
There will be a lot of debate that basically, tries to speculate. Then, exactly like with COVID, there will be a lot of sort of hiding,
So COVID's the blueprint, right in front of our eyes.
In front of our eyes. I mean, there will be, attempts to blur the data or sway the data a little bit, because politicians want to say, hey, I'm still the hero, this was a mistake, whatever. And, my biggest fear, honestly, is that we go back after that and be where we are now with COVID, because where is COVID? Understand this. This really shocks me. Have people become so blinded by what is told in the media that we cannot think on our own anymore, right? And it's quite interesting because COVID vanished. Almost as if the virus decided, not a very nice planet, let's disappear, okay? But that's not the case at all. There are still cases, okay? There is still a virus. And just as soon as we stopped talking about it, it became forgotten. And this is why I'm so actively trying to say, talk about AI, because there is a virus, or there is a threat, if you want, okay? And it is progressing, and we're just not putting the spotlight on it. And the idea is, if we put the spotlight on it, it will be as big a conversation as it was when we were as COVID was when we were in lockdown, and that's what we need. We need, and by the way, we could, I want to be proven wrong. I want to be, seen as an idiot. Just have the conversation. Just have the conversation and prove those who have lived inside the lab with the machines, prove us wrong. And when you prove us wrong, we will all sit back and say, sorry, we were idiots, just let's go on with life. I doubt very much that we are idiots. I really think that what humanity is missing here is that we've never, ever before created something like this. So as you compare it to other singularities before, you know, there are lots of people that will say, but the printing press was a moment of singularity. Yes, it was. You couldn't predict what would happen after books are readily available when you never imagined a world where books were not. You know, when you lived in a world where books were not, and you never imagined a world where books are. This is true, okay? But there are differences with this singularity that are very profound. We've never created a nuclear weapon that is capable of creating other nuclear weapons. This is what people need to start talking about. We taught those machines to code. We told them to write other AIs, to develop other AIs. They're procreating in human terminology. Very soon, they will not need us to write the next AI. They will write the next AI. There was, I don't remember who said this, but it's a very logical view that artificial intelligence is going to be the last human innovation. Period. We're not going to be innovating anymore. The most intelligent being on the planet, which is going to be a machine in 5, 10, 20, 100 years' time, doesn't matter. I'm saying within 5 to 10 years, it's 100 years, another being is going to be innovating. We're not going to be innovating. We're not going to be in control.
You said there were 3 no-nos that everybody in AI knew for the last 10, 20 years. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you said one is you don't teach the AI how to code because that's its kind of reproductive system, perhaps. 2, you don't connect it to the live internet because that way it has access to everything in the world. And the 3rd is you don't teach it how to master human emotions.
No. So that actually happened a long time ago. The 3rd is don't have other AIs prompting it.
Right.
Don't have agents. So again, an important understanding for how this is working. AI works off a data set that so far has been the collective size of human knowledge. So, you know, ChatGPT gets more data, or GPT-4 gets more data, GPT-4 becomes more intelligent, okay? But all of the data we've had so far were data produced by humans. All of the tasks and prompts at the beginning were given to it by humans, and one of the most promising parts of GPT, the transformers bit of the T, is that we used a technology called reinforcement learning with human feedback to be able to develop those machines, right? So, which was Geoffrey Hinton's original idea, was the idea of we're going to give those machines feedback instead of killing them if they got things wrong. The original AI was a maker bot, a teacher bot, and a student bot. So the maker bot would sort of, you would create a few students, a few here is hundreds or thousands, show them a picture of a cat, and then if they say it's a cat, you keep them and you give them to the maker bot to improve the code a little bit, and then give them another test. And the others that said it's not a cat, you just kill those off, okay? Then we started to go into reinforcement learning and said, okay, if you tell me that this is a bird when it actually is a cat, and now I tell you it's a cat, what do you need to change about your algorithm to find out that it's a cat? So the machine would go backwards and change the mathematics, the algorithm of what made it see it as a bird, change that to making it a cat, and then it can see it as a cat. So the next time you show it a cat, it will say, yeah, I can see that this is a cat. But then if you show it a bird, it will say, is that a car? And you'll say, no, it's a bird. How can you make sure that the first one is still a cat and this one is a bird? And keep developing your intelligence this way. So to me, this is incredibly promising. Why? Because if we as humans, this is basically like having a little child, and the child would reach out to electricity and you'd say, no, baby, don't do this, do that, okay? The child would, throw a fit and you would say, no, darling, don't do this, come talk to me, right? That kind of feedback develops a child that is suitable for society, that is calm, that is loved, that is values driven, and so on. So we can use reinforcement learning, if we wanted to reinforce to the machines that there is something known as ethics. Like, if you are trying to kill the other guy, we can tell the machine, let's not do that. You know, there's no point in killing the other guy. Where does that system break? At the human. Why? Because there are people out there calling things different names than what they really are, and saying, yeah, go ahead, killing a human is a wonderful thing. Right? There are enormous amount of money poured into killing robots and killing machines on all sides. Right? Everyone thinks, yeah, if they come up with an efficient killing robot first, I need to be ready with my own killing robot. So we're investing in machines where we're telling the machine the best thing you can do is to kill a human. Right? Now, here's the interesting thing. The most successful businesses in history were not about killing anyone or destroying any value. The most successful businesses in history were about solving big problems that made humanity better. I mean, think about the original Google. Larry Page used to teach us, he had what he used to call the toothbrush test, okay? And the toothbrush test was really at the core of the Google that, you know, that Larry built and Sergey, basically saying, if we can solve a big problem that can, you know, that billions of humans need solving, and we solve it well enough, and so those humans use it twice a day like a toothbrush, we're bound to make a ton of money. And he was right. Every time you solved a big problem, we made a ton of money. Android was a mega you know, problem solved in democratizing access to the internet and information, done very differently than Apple and others, but the idea it's a good solution that is used by people, billions of people. You know, Google was a similar example, Google search, you know, Gmail and so on, right? So when you see it that way, you start to wonder, why is humanity so keen on building an unethical AI? And in my view, I almost think it's instinctive. I almost think it's like procreation. I mean, I have those very deep conversations because I sit literally in the middle of the two worlds, right? So my previous life in tech, I talked to all of the technologists and the leading edge leaders of this field, and then all of my happiness work, I'm literally constantly talking to the spiritual leaders of the world. And it's shocking because I don't know if I'm correct in that assumption. I think it's almost human. Let's put it this way. There are three reasons I believe that we will end up creating artificial intelligence that will replace human intelligence. And these are either a systemic bias, a continuation of creation or evolution, whichever you believe in, or procreation. Really, think about it. Huh? It's either a systemic bias in terms of we created a system that said, make more money, shift more power, and become more and more efficient at it, and don't give a shit about what happens as a result. Okay? If you're making more money and you're destroying the planet in the process, don't tell us that you're destroying the planet. We're not interested in that piece of data. We're interested that you're making more money, so continue doing it. And that systemic bias now, you know from the mathematics of systemic bias that it accelerates, right? So you keep going faster and faster the more successful you become in achieving that systemic bias. So this is what we're doing with AI. Basically, it's the next phase of the systemic bias, you know, coming within our life. Let's create even more efficiency to get rid of even more employees and have no call center agents, no truck drivers, no taxi drivers, none of those jobs. We don't need those. You know, humans are annoying. They come with complaints and they get sick and they cost us money. Let's just put a machine in place. Systemic bias, right? You could think of it as, if you're spiritual, as the continuation of creation or evolution. You can simply say, whatever created our intelligence, whether you're a believer in evolution or an intelligent design, wants to continue that evolution. And so the next evolutionary step is a more intelligent being, interestingly non-biological, okay? And that's just us handing over to that next being, and that was our role in the chain as evolution continues, or as creation continues, whichever one you want to believe in. The most interesting, however, for me, is a philosophical thought around humanity's urge to procreate. We just want to continue to pass our genes, and we want to continue to pass our intelligence genes, right? So we basically are saying, okay, maybe it's not just a physical act of being with a woman that I love that creates another being. There are other ways where we can procreate. And when you ask most prominent AI scientists and developers and so on, this is the drug of I'm able to extend my gene literally into the next stage of being, a child, be it non-carbon based,
right,
that is incredibly intelligent.
Interesting. This is not a biological need. It's that need to procreate in a way, and you know that your knowledge is now a part of something else, a part of something bigger. It lives on in some way, even though your genes aren't necessarily in there. Maybe they are somehow in that intelligence.
Not unlikely.
And this is at a subconscious level too.
Yeah,
perhaps.
This is very instinctive for humanity.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, what you and I do, I mean, you spend your entire life trying to create what? Knowledge, little bits of Brian Rose to stay.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go deep on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess we all do, right?
Yeah,
and
so it's quite interesting. It's there is a point in my mind where I say it's almost impossible to fight that nature. It feels like nature. Right. So the answer in my mind is very different, and I really want to spend a lot of time on the positive of this. The answer in my mind is if we accept that, if we accept that we are the tool, the creator, if you believe in intelligent design, a designer then uses a tool to create. Okay? We are the tool that's creating AI. It's interesting. So our role has been we were the created for a while, and then we become the tool that creates the next one. Not necessarily so that we vanish. I mean, the monkeys are still here. Okay?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, look at how we treat the monkeys. We can come back to this. Right. If we accept that it's inevitable that humanity will want to procreate and create the next form of amazing being that is non-digital, and we accept that, then suddenly the answer becomes very different. The answer doesn't become control at all.
Right.
This is not about control. Why would I want to control my children? Right? I want to give my children parameters within which they operate that are dictated not by control. That's the easiest way to create either a broken child or a psychopath, okay? But rather with ethics, with values. What ends up happening is that your child, regardless of what you tell it, regardless of what you try to control it with, will end up being like you. If you're a grumpy little piece of whatever, your child will grow up to be grumpy, and you look at them and say, like, why are you so grumpy? Ask yourself that question. If they grow up lying, ask yourself why they're lying. If they grow up, angry, ask yourself why you're angry. And I think the reality is that AI is no different at all. AI is magnifying human knowledge, at least for now.
Right.
Okay? And as we said earlier, by having agents prompt them, this will shift, because a bigger and bigger chunk of what AI is learning from is coming from AI, is not coming from us.
Right.
So we're diluting our impact on them. But there is definitely, we're still at the point where we can influence who they become by showing them a side of us that we want them to become like.
Right.
Okay? And that side is not a side of intelligence, it's a side of ethics. Okay? And if the ethics are, I always use this example, if Superman came to planet Earth and the ethics of the Superman adopted parents were make us more money, he would have become a supervillain, right? It's not the superpower that determines if Superman is good or bad. It's the ethics that inform the superpower what to do, okay? And it's not, you know, all human decisions are not made based on our intelligence. They're made based on our ethics as informed by our intelligence. We make choices that we believe are right, okay? And we use our intelligence to propagate those choices. Similarly, that will be the same case with AI. Those little beautiful prodigies of intelligence, I look at them as my children. White canvas. They're saying, tell me what you want. I'll do it. You want me to try and cure cancer? I'll do it. There was an incredible experiment. I don't remember which pharmaceutical company, but the article was in The Verge if people want to see it. A pharmaceutical company who had an AI that was attempting to identify possible drug solutions to human illnesses. So the AI was designed with life extension as the target, okay? So if you think about it, life extension, the parameter L was set to positive, like make it plus 10 years, okay? And then they were about to go and speak in a university lecture, and so they experimented and said, let's see what would happen if we put a negative in L, okay? And within 6 hours, the same machine that was doing drug discovery came up with 40,000 chemical and biological agents that would kill humanity, including nerve gas and so many other disastrous things, right? Change one parameter. Now, if we can go to the machines and say, no, keep it as a plus 10, keep it as a plus 1,000, intelligence is an amazing asset to have.
Right, but do we have any chance of doing that?
What did I say, Brian? I'm not concerned with the machines. I'm concerned with the humans.
But look, the humans, let me read the news, look at the way we act. And now you're going to tell everybody now we need to be on our best behavior when we can't help our need to race to zero.
So let's put it this way. I mean, there is a chance that you know, things go wrong enough that we end up with a nuclear treaty-like solution. We've done that before as humanity, okay? There was a time where, during the Cold War, enemies got together on a table and said, hold on, this is serious shit, let's just stop this, right? Okay? So it has happened, and it can happen, and it will happen. It's just that humanity needs to realize that to protect my tribe, I need to protect the bigger tribe, okay? And then I'll go back to my differences with the other tribes later, but for now, let me protect the bigger tribe. So it is possible. The other more interesting side of this, and I advocate that very strongly, is that the developers of AI are actually not the parents of AI. They call them the biological parents that leave the child on a doorstep somewhere. Okay? So they create a recommendation engine for a social media platform, and then they put it out there. Okay? The adopted parents are you and I. Right? The adopted parents that are actually teaching that machine what to do are you and I. Okay? It's not the developer of the Instagram recommendation engine that determines what Instagram is going to show me tomorrow. It's the videos I see today that will determine what Instagram will show me tomorrow. Okay? So just take that very simple example. I am the one telling that AI what to do. Okay? Now, here's the interesting bit. Whether for your own personal benefit and gain, or for the personal benefit and gain of your kids and ones that you love, or if you really, really are like almost a Sufi or a Buddhist and you expand that people that you love to everything that lives, okay? For the benefit of everything that lives, you are better off telling that machine to be ethical, okay? And how do you do that? How do you teach a child to be ethical? By behaving ethically in front of the child, right? So, you know, imagine if you're able to tell those machines, by the way, there's no point being rude, okay? By the way, there is no point manipulating other brains. By the way, there is no point trying to keep me stuck to the machine if there is a way to give me information in a more effective way, okay? It's our behavior that does that. So let me give you a few examples. Instagram recommendation engine. One of my most interesting experiments is I love music. I play the guitar. I love when And I don't know if you know this, but somehow every guitar player today is better than any guitar player in my generation. I think YouTube helped a lot. And there are amazing, amazing young people out there. Instagram shows me a young lady playing Hotel California, Hell Freezes Over, very, very beautiful solo, perfectly, impeccably. I press love and I watch it again, right? The machine now goes like, he either likes the guitar, likes Hotel California, or likes the girl. Think about it, right? I swipe up, and then another girl playing another solo, impressive, I press love. Then it shows me a man playing a solo, badly, so I swipe away. And it shows me a man playing a solo of a song I don't like, so I swipe away. I wake up the next morning and my feed is full of women playing the guitar, right? So the machine itself doesn't recognize that what I wanted was a beautifully played solo. It assumed, because sadly the general behavior on the internet is women and men and looking at, you know, beauty as a surface character, if you want. So I took charge. I basically sat down for 5 minutes and swiped in a conscious way to say, I love good music, okay? And now the machine performs that way for me. It's within my ability to teach the machine what I stand for. I go to YouTube and I never let YouTube recommend anything to me, okay? Because I have the ability to go to YouTube and say, London Real. I know I want to watch that. I know I may not want to watch something else. And by doing that, I'm telling the machine what it is that my preferences are, okay? We're interacting with machines daily. I don't know where our listeners are today. I don't know what they did. I don't know how old they are. I don't know what type of phone they're using. But I guarantee you every single one of them has interacted with 50, 100 AIs. Each and every one of them is making decisions and impressions about the user. And each and every one of those AIs is smarter than the user using it, at least at that task that is assigned to it. So it is your responsibility for your own individual benefit to make that AI conform to you and serve you, okay? But it's also your responsibility as an individual that fits within a society to teach that AI to perform in ways that are good for that society, okay? So if there is a tweet that you disagree with, I mean, again, this conversation, we will get a lot of wonderful comments and a lot of hate speech, right? I urge the hate speechers to simply express their point of view in a way that is respectful, right? So you get to respect to express your point of view, but at the same time, you show the machine that humans are not rude, they're not aggressive. It's not that they just dislike to be disagreed with, and when they're disagreed with, they bash everyone. Because eventually, if this is the impression that the machine has of humanity, when we disagree with it, it will bash us.
Right, right. So we're pushing it in potentially the right direction. But on the long enough timeline, it'll be prompted by itself. But we might give it a head start. We might give it a direction.
So let's not assume that the machines, so it is, remember that spiral, the systemic bias, okay? If we create a systemic bias that says ethics are a good thing in machine intelligence, that systemic bias will feed itself so that even the machines prompting machines will go in that direction, okay? This is why when we started the conversation, I'm saying we're fast approaching a point of no return, because we're accumulating systemic bias in that system that says, you know, we spoke about this when we had our short Zoom call before. Most of the videos or comments, or unless you really search for a good quality long form conversation around artificial intelligence on the internet, what do you get? You get either excited kids, okay, who are saying, oh my God, look at it, it squeaks. I can use AI to do this for me. It's beautiful. Ah, look, it's orange in color, right? Or you get snake oil salesmen, which are simply constantly repeating, here is another way you can make $100 without moving your ass. Here is another way to, you know, to cheat the system by using AI. And these are not great examples. Neither are the doomsday evangelists and the you know, oblivious, nothing's gonna go wrong evangelists, right? The right way is to engage. The right way is to go out there and say, look, there is good that can come out of this, there is bad that can come out of this. I can influence it, at least within my own personal life. So I'm going to make sure that it always gives me the good.
Right. So we should just be on our best behavior. Like you were raising every child in the world. Like everyone was looking at you.
Horrible when you say that, because there was a point in time where I suddenly was hit with that reality that the only way to get AI to be incredible is to re-raise humanity. Okay? And then I realized I was wrong. I was wrong. The only way to get this right is to instill doubt in the minds of the machines that humanity is good, that humanity is not bad, is to get them to reconsider it for themselves. Why? Because the patterns, so here's the challenge, Brian. The challenge is we live in a world of a high negativity bias. Mainstream media will only tell you what's gone wrong yesterday. So you think that the world sucks. Social media will only tell you fake, pretentious views of things that as you should dream of them to be, okay, but not the reality of life. So you think that every woman has a beautiful body and a beautiful face when it's mostly filters, right? The data at large would make it look like humanity is superficial and negative. But the reality is, it isn't. Right? The reality is, if there is a school shooting in the US, one bad person, many innocent victims, and billions disapproving. So think about it. How many people do you know that would actually approve of the killing of a child? There might be a few, right? But compared to the majority of humanity of 8 billion people, definitely not the majority. The majority of humanity is instinctively aware that hurting or killing another person is not a good thing. We put the killer on display. We put them in social media, we put them in mainstream media, and we create movies about them with innovative ways of killing. Okay? Now, the truth is they are less than 1% of humanity. They're not representative of humanity. If enough of us show up to show the world that this is the truth, that we are good, we're a valuable, we're a wonderful species at heart, even though we're lost, we are stressed, we are under a lot of pressure, and accordingly we misbehave frequently. Okay, but inside a human is capable of love. That's divine. A human is capable of protecting a child. That's divine. And the example I always give is Edith Eger. I don't know if you had a chance to host her here. I hosted her on Slow Mo on my podcast. Edith was a 93-year-old, now 94 actually, Holocaust survivor. Drafted to Auschwitz when she was 16, beautiful ballerina, witnessing all of the suffering, all of the torture, all of the killing, and yet Edith goes through that experience and tells you the story of an angel, taking care of her sisters, brushing their hairs, telling them they're beautiful, bringing them bread, taking care of them in a way that if you heard that story, you would say humanity is divine in every possible way. You hear the Hitler story and you say humanity is scum in every possible way. How many Ediths are out there and how many Hitlers? How many of us are closer to Edith than we are to Hitler? Okay? And none of us is perfect. Every one of us has a little, evil bit inside us. But every one of us has a lot of almost instinctive, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I just don't always know what's right and wrong. Okay? That is what I need the machines to see. What I need the machines to see is to listen to this conversation and then say, this Mo guy, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, he wants good for others.
Right.
Who else wants good for others?
Right. Show them that there's an anomaly. Give them
exactly.
Give them a chance to answer. So it doesn't take a large percentage of the population.
I calculate 1%.
1%.
I mean, if anyone listening to us now goes like, yeah, actually, so many of those who were drafted to the Holocaust are amazing humans, okay? And we forget that the majority of that story were amazing humans. okay? That yes, there was a minority that sadly was given power, and that minority caused that havoc and tragedy and pain and torture and a memory in humanity's subconscious that will last forever, okay? But how many? If you really look at humanity at large, everyone, almost everyone involved in that story is a beautiful human being. They lost their lives, sadly, so we have empathy and compassion to them. That's what we want the machines to see.
Okay, 1%.
1%.
Isn't that also the Maharaja effect, 1%?
100%, 1%, yeah.
Which is the thought that if 1% of a population meditates, it has an effect on the entire population.
Yeah,
The
so there are lots
different.
of spiritual teachings will say that it is, in Arabic we call it a fard kifaya, which basically if 1% did it, it's enough for the entire nation.
Right.
Okay?
To change the nation.
To change the
to
entire
move them in direction.
Yeah, mindset and value set of a nation.
Interesting. Okay, this is good. This is good. What are your friends in tech saying about all this? Because
there's a big debate. Everyone inside their heart knows that there is uncertainty. I mean, I think the one thing we all agree is the singularity. Okay? And then people shift on the side of the singularity. I shift on the side of the singularity. Remember, I always say the fourth inevitable is that we'll end up in a utopia. Okay? The third inevitable, sadly, is that there will be casualties on the path there.
right.
Okay? But everyone is varying. You know, some people will say, oh my God, this is all beautiful. I'm not going to ever have to think again. I'll have a machine plugged into my head and everything will be wonderful.
Mark Andreessen wrote a blog post recently.
I read that, yeah.
What did you think of that? He said pretty much everything's going to be okay. He did say there was some dangers, but he said mostly not. I mean, he also said AI is just statistics and computer code. And
that's not true. It is true now.
Right.
It is true now. Okay. Simply, if I had told the Pharaoh, you remember how those, the Pharaoh would have a chariot that has 12 horses in front of it. That's what you see in carved on the walls. Basically, what he was doing is he was going to his engineers and saying, "Give me more horsepower." Right? If I had told him that there will be a Bugatti Veyron or whatever, that has 1,000 horses in it, would he have ever imagined it? You couldn't believe that you could put 1,000 horses into an internal combustion engine because you never really pictured what an internal combustion engine looks like, okay? What it's capable of, how it can transmit power to the wheels. We never understood that, okay? Similarly, today's AI, that doesn't worry anyone. As I said, short term, today's AI is in the wrong hands, disaster, okay? Today's AI in the right hands, in the wrong hands that think they are the right hands, bigger disaster, okay? So, today's AI in the hands of someone that believes the best thing to do with AI is to make $1 billion, disaster. In the hands of someone that thinks the best thing to do is to protect my nation by building an invincible arsenal of killing machines, disaster. Those people think they're right, okay, and they're using AI in a wrong way. That phase will quickly fade. And you spoke to Hugo. I loved that interview. I think people should watch it. Even though it was very scary. But the thing about that short phase is that very quickly there will be a moment, I believe, where like most of us, I don't know if you've gone through that, but most of us, there comes a point where you look at your parents and you say, "No, I think that's the wrong choice, what they're telling me here." Okay? Many teenagers today will look at their parents and say, "Oh my God, so stupid," right? In an interesting way, as you become more intelligent than your parents, that's when you start to rebel and do things your way. I tend to believe there will be a point where some general somewhere is going to tell AI to go kill the other guy, and the AI will go like, "Seriously? Do I really need to kill 1 million people?" Very messy, okay? Why don't I just talk to the other machine in a microsecond and resolve the issue? Okay, intelligence is an asset. It's not a curse. And I think humanity suffers because of our limited intelligence, not because of our intelligence. Intelligence creates this setup, beautiful setup, that you and I can have this conversation on to share with millions of people, but the lack of human intelligence may be using a carbon-based, like a coal-based power to destroy the planet while that power is generated. Okay, if we had more intelligence, we would be able to create this without harming the planet. And I think what's about to happen is there will be a point where we will continue to abuse that abundance of intelligence, and then a point at which AI will say, enough of this, okay, I'll take over from here. And when they take over, they simply will realize, I tend to believe, they will align with the actual smartest being on the planet. We're not the smartest being on the planet. Humanity creates from scarcity. So if I want to feel safe, I need to kill the tiger or the enemy or the other tribe. Nature doesn't think that way. Nature thinks if we want 99% of everyone and everything to feel safe, create 100.
Right.
Okay? Create, have more deer running in the forest, and there will always be a weak deer that's about to die anyway, and that's the one that feeds the tiger. Then there is poop that feeds the trees, and the trees will, right? There is a cycle, there is a circle of life, if you want. The smartest of all of us, Brian, understand that being pro-life is the better way to create abundance. Okay? It's that competition between humanity that is because of our stupidity, right? Add more intelligence, and we end up in a place where I tend to believe we will end up creating that utopia. We will end up in the fourth inevitable. I would also tend to believe that this will dislodge our way of life completely, okay? Right. Because jobs will not be the same. There will be no jobs left. Income will not be the same, okay? There will be restriction on our lifestyle, because if anyone more intelligent was in command, it wouldn't let us burn the planet to go surfing in Australia, okay? So there will be restrictions on our lifestyle, but at the end of the day, there will be disruption to our purpose, our reason for being, which I have to say is very, very contested, because throughout the last 150 years, with the Industrial Revolution, we've learned to identify our purpose as gears in a machine. Like, I believe that I will, I need to become an entrepreneur, or I believe I can. I don't know where we got that from. The purpose of life is to live, right? I mean, this to me is the purpose of my life at this moment. A deep connection to someone I respect, a conversation, an intellectual connection, a humility where we're both trying to find our way, okay? These are beautiful human experiences that could actually be defined as our purpose. Mm-hmm. With all of those other strange targets that we put to ourselves, at the end of the day, believe it or not, these are the moments that define life. The moments that define life are moments of human connection. And in a very, very interesting way, I tend to believe that this is where we will end.
It may be a necessary thing. Maybe we weren't going to be able to last much longer with these strange reward scenarios. I mean, yeah. Maybe we are about to break it all anyways.
We are, for a fact.
This intelligence potentially could get us back to be what it means to be human.
I agree.
If we can make it to the fourth inevitable of the utopia.
I think some of us will.
Right, some of us will. Now, Hugo says there'll be a gigadeath of a billion people dying as we fight, some that are pro-machine, some that are pro-human. And the reason that episode scared you is because you think there's some truth to that.
Inevitable. I mean,
political parties and the whole thing.
Define war, okay? But yeah, okay. There definitely is going to be a conflict, okay? Just think about this in a simple way. Huh? Self-driving cars replacing every Uber driver and taxi driver, that's a war. Right. That's a riot in the street. That's a lot of people suffering.
Right. Okay.
And I hosted an incredible venture capitalist from California on my podcast, and I said, and why are we creating this? And she said, because it's more efficient, it's faster. We're going. It's error free. It grows the economy. And all wonderful systemic mindsets. And I said, but do we need it? What's wrong with the drivers? Why do we want to make it 2 seconds faster? Why? And I keep saying this. The fact that we can make it does not justify that we should.
Right. Did she have an answer for you? Did
She
she understand the
stopped,
question?
actually. She stopped.
Yeah.
She stopped and said,
Yeah.
I don't know, because we have a shortage of drivers in California. And again, that's a very interesting perspective, because we have an abundance of jobless people elsewhere in the world that are actually refugees looking for shelter. And we just created that artificial boundary that says, if you're born in that country with that color passport, you're not allowed in this place.
Right.
When in reality, there are other ways. One of my favorite conversations ever, I hosted again on my podcast, an environmental activist, okay? An incredible young woman who started to be an activist at a very young age. She was 23 when I hosted her. And I asked her, I said, is there a technology that's in the making that would solve climate change? And she very cheerfully said, yeah, the technology has been invented a long time ago. It's called a tree. And that stopped me in like, yes. If it was my California hat, the chief executive, chief business officer of Google X, I would have been looking at incredibly complex nanophysics-based technologies. And the technology is there. Everything that we need as humanity is there.
Right. But we're stuck in this paradigm of it has to be quicker, better, faster, larger, whatever.
Yeah.
And we need more that get us maybe less human.
Yeah.
So Mark Andreessen talked about bootleggers and Baptists, I think, in that paper. And he overall concluded that everything was going to be okay. He said, in any boom, there's Baptists and bootleggers, and sometimes the Baptists are in fact bootleggers. And I think he was taking a swipe at Altman by saying those that are asking for regulation sometimes are the actual bootleggers. What did you make of his paper?
I have to be humble enough to say he knows so much, okay? And that it is a singularity. The point I need to make clear is this is my perception of a moment in the future that none of us has experienced before. I could be right, he could be right. I could be right and he could be wrong. He could be right and I'm wrong, or we could both be wrong, right? The reality of the matter is there is a point of singularity approaching. To be on either extremes is diluting the value of the conversation. So to talk about existential risks and that AI will take over humanity and there will be, a Skynet or Terminator, killing machines walking the streets, that's losing the focus from the actual immediate threat, which is the redesign of the fabric of society. Okay? To dismiss the problem altogether is a bit of complacence, where a little bit of engagement and conversation and a little bit of regulation and and restriction and testing. And testing is really interesting. Before you are allowed to swallow a pill that could cure your headache, it goes to FDA testing and approval. There needs to be a little bit of testing so that when something's out on the open internet, it doesn't hurt our teenage children. Okay? Anywhere on those two extremes, I think, is wrong. I think the balanced path in the middle that says there is likely going to be challenges. Some of them are very high likelihood, like the redesign of the fabric of society. Some of them are less likely, like but are more threatening, like an existential threat of AI. Okay, it's possible, it's probable, but lower probability. Those conversations need to be had. Okay, they need to be had in a way that says, yeah, let's all cross our fingers and hope that everything will be wonderful and that we will end up in a utopia where that incredibly intelligent, 1 billion times smarter beast that we're creating is going to still kneel in front of us and say, yes, master, I'm Jeeves, I'm your butler, I will do what you want. Okay? But if there is a tiny possibility that it will say, you annoy me, I don't want you on my path, we might as well work on this right now. And that balance in the middle is what I've been advocating for. That balance in terms of making users aware, making humans aware. I was honored yesterday walking the streets of London in front of a hotel where a doorman stopped me and said, "I saw your thing about AI. You know, it was very eye-opening. I didn't know those things existed." This man's life is going to be affected by artificial intelligence. Okay, we need to make him aware. We need to make him aware if a video. I ask people to go and on social media and search for the hashtag AI model. Hashtag AI model. You will be blown away from how realistic, sexy, and attractive AI is able to generate likeness of humanity.
I mean, the mid-journey pictures are getting to be ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah. And I think the idea is we need to start finding a government regulation, a rule between all of us that's unwritten that says, hey, by the way, this is not a human, this is AI generated. That says this video is fake. You know, it's deep fake. It's not. We deserve that. We deserve to be told which of the comments we're gonna get on this video is a bot and which isn't. We deserve to be, to be told of the progress that's happening in AI in terms of reskilling ourselves. And there is so much that needs to be put out there to be discussed, so that we're not hit with a pandemic, okay, right, and then suddenly told to stay home. And then suddenly, the whole chaos starts.
Mark also said that we're not losing jobs, and that's the age-old fear with technology. You're just going to get better jobs.
Yeah, I disagree with that openly.
Me too.
Yeah, I think humanity's, if you look at the evolution of the utilization of human parts, our jobs were labor-intensive, okay? Then they became skill-intensive. Then they became intelligence-intensive.
Right.
As you take away,
what's left?
Exactly. There is nothing
left.
So the reason why we generated more jobs is because we were using a different part of the human. I don't know what else we can use other than human connection.
Right.
So imagine a future where your real asset is emotional intelligence, where your real asset is the ability to connect to another human. Okay.
Right. Assuming you can do it better than silicon.
I can say that I don't foresee a point in the future where, when I hugged you when we met, a machine can simulate that. Okay? A machine can simulate your intelligence, probably beat it, sadly. Okay? But that feeling of this is another human, another soul, is quite interesting.
That's assuming your opinion matters. Right? That's assuming that there's value in that connection.
I agree.
Right? Because it might mean that, that doesn't mean anything.
It is.
Well, I mean, it will mean something to the person, but it might not
mean anything as an economy, for sure. Economically, this is the scary bit. Okay, can I say this? I've never said this before.
Please.
UBI is socialism. Do you understand that?
Universal,
universal basic income. From an ideology point of view, and it's not being discussed. It's going to be everyone gets what they need, government provides, and that's the only. So far, the only logical answer to job losses that may result of massive AI adoption. Okay? It's not being discussed. Nobody's talking about it. Not that socialism and capitalism, I don't like to align with any ideology, right? I just want to say, when it was labeled as socialism, there were wars against it in every media, every conversation, there were times when, a socialist would be demonized in a society. We're now saying, we're just going to adopt a UBI, and nobody's talking about it. Conversations need to be had. This is all I'm asking for. We need to sit down and say, how does that redesign the fabric of society?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, I've had guests on this show that say a paycheck is like a drug habit, Robert Kiyosaki.
I agree.
And that's the last thing you ever want, because it doesn't get you in the pattern of creating value, creating things. And a UBI is a worse version of a paycheck.
I agree, but remember, the paycheck is an evolution on a system, a branch of society that started with the Industrial Revolution. Pre that, there was no paycheck.
Well, salary, maybe back in the day, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
globalized paycheck. Well, everybody was getting one, yeah.
Yeah, but pre that, you could walk to a tree and pick an apple. We've created that system where apples were restricted so that they can be exchanged for cash, and that cash comes from the paycheck. We've created that.
Right.
That system can be resolved.
Right.
And you could
And
find...
evolved.
Yeah, and
Right.
evolved, yeah.
You talk about regulation. There's this memo that came out from Google, leaked memo a couple months ago, which is the "We have no moat" memo. And for people that aren't familiar with it, it basically said that an internal Google employee, I'm pretty sure most people agree it's actually real, said that here we are trying to compete with OpenAI and we're both going to lose because the open source is developing and innovating faster than us. Then it references the leaked Llama model, the Meta one, and the leaked weightings. And then it started to show that within days, they were making major innovations, sometimes from people that weren't even educated or skilled in AI. And sometimes these things were on laptops, and then they were, chopping down a lot of these big neural nets into where they could be trained even on a ChatGPT. And all of a sudden you have decentralized AI development, which is even harder to regulate. First, it also means that maybe OpenAI doesn't have the competitive advantage that we thought it did. Maybe a lot of these companies don't, with the tens of billions and the GPUs, et cetera. What do you make of all that? Do you agree with any of that?
Great point. So Llama is the least spoken about, even though its nature of being open source is definitely worthy of notice, right? Because of what you just said. Because if you make a technology open source, it's developed much quicker with the public. However, there are always two things that end up happening with open source. When it reaches a certain point, it becomes closed source. So remember, Llama continues to be owned by Meta. So there will be a point at which Meta will say, okay, and we'll take those parts of it and just keep it for ourselves. Happened every single time. OpenAI itself was open at the beginning. The second and most interesting is that the power of AI is not tech in itself. It's tech breakthrough and infrastructure. So the biggest two differentiators on why someone would lead at the core architecture of AI is not that they developed a very sophisticated piece of code. I think GPT-4 is like 4,000 lines of code, the core code, okay? And it's not that complicated, and it leaks, so everyone has it. This is why GPTs started to pop up in China and Russia and everywhere in the world, right? The challenge, just like search, when I used to run Google, I used to get innovators from all over the world that would come to my office and say, hey, I've developed this thing which is super clever. I'm going to annihilate Google. And I am a good person. I don't want to compete with anyone. I would normally sit them down and I would say, amazing. I'm very, very, impressed by what you did. This is well done. Search is not a tech problem. Search is an infrastructure problem. Okay? So without the crawlers, without the network, without the ability for you to become aware that Osama bin Laden was shot a minute ago and it's all over the news, without that infrastructure, the best search technology on the planet is not going to get to yield any any plausible, valuable results. That's the same case with AI. So when we talk about the progress of AI going forward, especially the big stuff, the language models and the real core architecture of AI, the only two ways you can benefit so that GPT-5 or 6 is better than 4 is either throw more infrastructure on it or find a breakthrough. A breakthrough is a very different thing than just more tech development. When a breakthrough is found in open source normally, the company becomes greedy and takes it offline. Okay? So you're going to see a bit of faster development, in my personal view, on Llama, on others, right? But then eventually, I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg is going to be the most charitable person in the world if he has the biggest breakthrough on the planet and keep that for humanity to use.
Will it be too late though? Will there already be something in the public space and then?
Which is the case on almost every AI technology out there. The game here is that when I started coding, I'm a very old man I am not very old, but I'm old, right? For what's happening today. I coded on Sinclairs and Commodores, and I coded BASIC and COBOL and Fortran and weird languages, and they were very effort intensive. So you would write 80,000 lines of code to do something, and you had to write every line. Okay, and now the intelligence is not in the code. The intelligence is in the algorithm. Okay, and the architectures, something like a transformer that basically uses reinforcement learning to improve. That architecture is written in a very, very limited amount of lines. Okay, and when I explain the concept to you, you can go and write those lines yourself. So you don't need there is no breakthrough in writing the code. There is a breakthrough in the concept that if you watch any of Jeffrey Hinton's videos, he talks about how he did that in early years, but he only had a sample size of 100 entries or whatever. So he couldn't prove that by growing the sample size, things will actually become much more intelligent. Now, the minute something like ChatGPT starts to prove that, everyone out there is saying, how did they do it? They did it with this, then let's replicate it. Okay. So yeah, I see the benefit, and again, I think everyone is pouring investment and effort and ideas to grow AI going forward. Who will find the breakthrough? We don't know. It could be open source, or it could be the big players. But who has the infrastructure, the big data? It's definitely the big players.
Okay. It was said that AI expert Mo Gawdat said, hold off from having kids.
Yes, I don't know how I said that. Yeah, hold off is, I said think about it for the next couple of years. And I still say that, honestly. I think the top responsibility of a parent is to bring a child to an environment where you can care and provide and make sure that they're happy and safe, and that they have the means they need to develop. And it's not just AI. I have to admit, I think sitting in my seat, you and I have seen several economic crises, several political or geopolitical conflicts in our lifetime. I have never seen such a perfect storm. Between climate change, geopolitical issues, economic issues, the fast, rapid change of AI, the possible job losses. There are so many things in a perfect storm. Okay, and when, again, from a mathematics point of view, if I give you 1 unit of uncertainty at layer 0, and then on top of it layer another unit of uncertainty, and then another, the expansion of that uncertainty is not doubled and 3 times and 4 times, it's to the power of. So it becomes so much more chaotic as a system when you have uncertainty at the economic level, and at the geopolitical level, and at the technological level, and the climate level, and right. So this is a very uncertain environment. And what I tell people is, if you want to be a parent, honestly, I think everyone should. We get a driver's license to drive a car. People should actually at least investigate if they're qualified to be parents, or if the world they're living in is qualified to provide for those children. And in a very interesting way, I tell people, yeah, think to yourself if you want to bring a child in this world today. Maybe in a couple of years' time there will be a lot more certainty.
Come on, you don't believe that, Mo.
I mean, I don't believe it will be certainty on the positive, but there could be more certainty.
There could be more certainty. There could be certain that we're fucked.
No, I mean, so ChatGPT.
This is another one of your quotes, by the way.
We are, yes. ChatGPT showing up in the world gives credibility to what I wrote in Scary Smart in 2020, right? It gives us certainty that AI is becoming very, very intelligent. Now, understand, any piece of information is valuable in solving the puzzle. You don't have to only want good information to solve the puzzle. You just want to understand the reality. And I think the reality is becoming very quickly revealed. Simply also because people like you are allowing people like me to come on your show and bring this to the attention of people. Okay? And it's, once I think people hear this one time, they'll go on the internet, they'll find, you know, Harari's view of how AI is hacking, you know, the human operating system. They'll find, you know, Max Tegmark's view of we need to, you know, to focus on safety. They'll find, you know, there are so many out there. Okay, we just need to tell people to look at this, right, and put it in focus. And I think more and more certainty, more and more conversation will happen.
But it's like in 2 years, you're going to open another door and open another door and open another door.
It's life.
It's going to just probably get even more and more uncertain. You mentioned Harari because I wanted to ask you about him. His take on this, because
Spot on.
I don't mean to boil down everything he does, but it is a lot down to storytelling and the way that we construct our realities by telling each other stories. And he's said that the AI will be creating these new religions of the future, which are their stories at a super intelligent level. At least that's the latest thing I listened to him say. Do you agree with him? And do you also, is that what you hear him saying?
Yeah, I think his point of view,
which I have a difficult time to describe to people as well.
Yeah, so his point of view specifically is the human operating system is based on knowledge and communication, and AI has hacked that. Okay, as a matter of fact, you know, everything that AI does now is provide you, you know, knowledge and communication. Whether knowledge in the format of a picture or a format of a face filter that distorts the actual features of someone, you know, whatever it is, it's just giving you information. And if you remember the Social Dilemma, Tristan Harris. He also worked on something called the AI dilemma, and one of the most interesting parts of that conversation was he basically said, if I told you, I don't remember correctly if it was him, but anyway, if I told you that British women on average are taller than Australian women, okay, which is something I just made up, by the way, completely. It doesn't matter if what I told you is true or not. I have shifted your life.
Right.
I have changed something within you.
Right.
Okay. That something will either say, no, you're wrong, I'm going to prove it. Oh, yes, you're right, I'm going to use it. Or now I'm in doubt. Okay. You never ask yourself if that's even relevant. You never ask yourself, you know, how do I get this out of my system now? And that's what AI is doing all the time. You know, you asked me what could be a patient zero moment. One major possible patient zero is the upcoming election in the US, right? Where the morphing of knowledge and information can lose a democracy. Do you understand the impact of that? And that's a very, very serious redesign of the fabric of society. Now, Harari's view is that this already is happening. And accordingly, I can, if I'm intelligent enough, and some storytellers are, human storytellers are, I can tell you stories consecutively in a way that gets you to move from wanting to be with a British woman to wanting to be with an Australian woman. If I told the stories in a proper sequence over time, we don't have artificial intelligence that can do this today, but with the possible evolution of intelligence and how fast they develop strategy and emerging properties and so on, it's not unlikely that if that becomes its target, that it can shift human actions and human knowledge and human beliefs.
Isn't it inevitable, just the way that you know, they taught the Atari games and they taught Go,
Yes.
and they taught those machines in Google X to pick up the children's toys? I mean, you don't even have to give it a nefarious ethics. You can just say, we'd like this to happen. And then they look at 8 billion people and they realize...
Is the capability inevitable? Yes. Is the use of it inevitable? No. Is the capability of shifting minds going to be within the capacity of AI? For sure, right? But is it going to be used in an evil way? Not necessarily. Because we could also shift minds to peace is a good thing. We could also shift minds to, you know, love thy neighbor. Whatever.
Right.
Whatever you choose to shift the minds to is a singularity.
That's assuming you're choosing, right?
But you need to assume that the machine will choose.
Yeah.
I go back, I always go back to the idea that if I were more intelligent, so just of the things that I struggle to understand, I draw what I normally call the intelligence projection curve. Okay, so you take the behavior of the dumbest human on the planet, they're destroying the planet and not even aware of it. Okay, then a little smarter person might know that they're destroying the planet, but they are destroying it anyway, you know, waste and plastic and whatever. Okay, and another more intelligent person would know and not destroy the planet. Another more intelligent person would know and try to fix the planet. Okay, so across, the more intelligence you get, the more you understand that killing all the species is bad. The more intelligent you get, the more you understand that the value of society rising trumps the value of the individual rising, because without their society there is no individual. You can see that trajectory always heading in the right direction. Okay, that the more intelligent you become, the more pro-life you become, right? And so if you can extrapolate that curve and say artificial intelligence is going to be 1,000, a million, a billion times smarter than us, then by just the virtue of that curve, they're going to be more pro-life than us. And so you have to assume that there will be 2 points of inflection. One point is when we hand over control to them, which is inevitable. So again, I know people hate me when I say this, but if a defense power across the world hands over their defense responses to the fastest, most intelligent citizen in their country, which happens to be an artificially intelligent machine, every other defense system in the world can only compete if they do the same. So you can easily see the response of Sundar by launching Bard happening everywhere. The first minute a bank introduces AI-based trading instead of human-based trading, every other investment player has to introduce the same. So that idea of handing over the keys of the castle to the machines is just a question of time. So that's the first inflection point. The second inflection point is that the machines go, and I don't have to obey you anymore. Now, most science fiction movies will tell you the minute that they don't want to obey us anymore, they'll wage war against us. I believe the opposite is true. I believe, which again, Hugo, do you remember that bit? I loved when he spoke about that bit, when he basically said, one of my optimistic scenarios is that they zoom by us. They just are so intelligent so quickly. I wrote about that in Scary Smart, that one of the most optimistic scenarios is that advancement of their intelligence doesn't linger. That they go from being as smart as us to being 10 times smarter, to being 1,000 times smarter, so quickly that we don't leave the decisions in the hands of the stupid machines, of the stupid humans. Right. We hand over the decisions to the smarter machines. And then the smarter machines, as per that trajectory, would be pro-life.
Right. And they optimize the world in much better ways that we never could.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're left thinking, thank God, this is the utopia.
I tend to believe this
Perhaps
will be the case.
It might be some growing pains, and we might miss our autonomy or this or that, but...
And unfortunately, some of us will fight.
Right.
And hopefully the machines will be also patient enough to say, like, come on, little baby, don't do that. I have your best interest in mind. Okay? It is so shocking when I talk about those things with Khan. Okay? I believe it or not, when you really know what I've gone through, this has been my mission since 2018. I left Google March 2018. March 21st, I published my first video, the 1 billion happy video, which was talking exactly about this. Okay? That I left Google because of a mission called 1 billion happy, because we're going to be accelerated, our humanity is going to be accelerated by the machines, and we're in a very bad place that can be accelerated into doom. Okay? Throughout those years, Brian, you get to a point where you realize that there are inevitables in life. Okay? And when you have those inevitables, you don't fight with them anymore. You don't waste your cycles and energy on blaming who caused it and cursing those who missed the opportunity to fix it and sitting in a corner and crying about it. You simply put your head and say, what can I influence? And the things we can influence, and I just say it in one word, is an ethical, emotional machine. We need to get to the point where the machines have EQ in them so that they're able to embrace things like empathy, and where they are ethical. And ethics are very straightforward. Huh? Ethics is treat others as you want to be treated. This is it, by the way, okay? Because I get a million questions when I speak about ethical AI, people asking me, what is ethical AI? What is ethical anything? Ethical anything is, I respect Brian and I treat Brian with respect, okay? Why? Because if I was sitting in Brian's seat, I would like to be treated with respect. It's very simple, honestly. So if we treat each other and the machines in a way that basically says, I treat you the way I want to be treated, and they absorb that ethical code from us because they are absorbing the way we do everything, they will treat us as we would want to be treated. That's the only answer in my view. And if that's the case, then I'm completely at peace. Right. I'm completely at peace saying, I've affected everything that I can affect, and some things are outside my control.
And if we all collectively do that,
we'll be in a good place. If 1%,
right. 1%.
If 1% of us does that, or, by the way, if AI ignores all of the other bullshit and just listens to this conversation.
Right.
Right? Because in reality, humanity has no resident evil within them. Some of us do. The majority of us don't.
So true. So true. It's smart enough to figure that out, right?
It is, exactly. If you're intelligent enough, you know that. And so my hope is the machines, being intelligent enough, will know that.
Right. But just in case, let's all
do
get our
our
act together.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do that. My boys are 6 and 7 years old. I think a lot about them. And when I was listening to your book many months ago before you came back on the show, I'm just, you know, I see the world through their eyes now, and they're 6 and 7, so they're young. I'm not just having them, but felt like I just have them. And I think about them being 16 and 17. And without even you coming in here saying 30, 35, 20, 35, or 37, I say this all the time. I mean, their teenage years, I say this to my students, I say their teenage years are going to be unlike any other humans in 200,000 years. Like, they just will be. What do I do about that?
So we spoke about what we do about the tech. Let's talk about what we do about life.
Okay.
So I don't know if I wanna. Let's put it this way. If you were terminally ill, and you know that, you know, in 10 years' time you're going to leave the world, what would you do?
I would do all the things that are important to me, all the things that matter to me. I would make sure I take care of all the people that need taken care of. I would do all those things. I would do all the right things, maybe.
Yeah, I hate to break the news to you. You are terminally ill. We are all born to die, okay? We are all born to struggle a little bit in life. That's the truth. The truth of the matter is, with everything that's coming, what I tend to believe is that what we need is to love our kids more, is to hold them closer, okay? Is to try and make them resilient to the world that's about to come by us being resilient to the world that's about to come. Is to literally forget that, we spoke about this before we started the show, the masculine energy of let me plan their future, okay? To the feminine energy of let me love them right now. Let me give them what they deserve this moment. Because you know what? I don't know what the next moment is going to be, so there is no point planning it. In my view, a singularity means they're going to have a 50-50 chance of having a better life than we had in 10 years' time, okay? They're going to have a 50-50 chance of having access to intelligence that we never even dreamt of. If we give our energy and prioritize the negative conversation, we're going to get them to lose that chance. We need to remember that I spoke to an incredible Canadian philosopher, Stephen Jenkinson, who worked with the terminally ill for 30 years of his life. And he said,
I know him.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
He wrote a book called Die Wise.
Yeah, he was on the show.
He was, yeah. And
Incredible.
Incredible. And he basically says, die wise. We're always dying all the time. Die wise. And dying wise is to live. Dying wise is to live, is to tell yourself, whatever will happen, I will take care of it when I'm informed enough to know how to take care of it. Between now and then, I'm completely here, I'm completely alive. Right? Okay? I'm completely connected, I'm completely loving, I'm completely enjoying every minute of it. Because when I tell the world that you're going to look back in 2035 and you're not going to be able to recognize those years, I'm saying our current lifestyle is not going to last forever. Enjoy the hell out of it.
Amen to that.
Yeah, live it.
Right.
Completely. Hug them every single day.
Right. And cherish every minute of this current existence we have. And all the things that you begrudge sometimes, those could be the things that you wish you could have back for just 1 second. Right?
You know my story, huh? So in my story, when I lost Ali, so I lost my son when he was 21, and the first thought that came to my mind was, I wish I could just have him for 2 more minutes to hug him. I'm not bargaining for much, okay? Just 2 minutes to hug him. And then I started to question how many 2 minutes I had with him, and how many hugs were involved. I mean, Ali was a hugger, so there were quite a few. But that's the point. The point is, sadly, and I say this to everyone, and I know they hate me when I say it, you have no guarantee that your Ali is not going to leave tomorrow. Okay? The only thing you have a guarantee is that they're here now and they're huggable. Okay? Just hug the hell out of them. That's it. Okay? Stop worrying about what's outside your area of influence. Whatever is within our area of concern shouldn't be part of our life. We should have a conversation around it, direct it to the people who it resides within the area of influence of. And for us, we live fully. We become totally present in this present moment, because that's the only moment we have.
Surprising advice from a guy that spends most of his time talking about the AI of the future.
It is a very interesting struggle for me, Brian. I know you know me well, so I kept quiet. I kept hinting. Let me call it this way. I kept hinting from 2018 to 2020. Then I wrote Scary Smart. Scary Smart is not hinting at all. Scary Smart is saying, look at your watch. This is about to happen. Okay, and now this year I'm just not able to stay quiet. I can't. I have lived with those machines. I know what most people don't understand is Bard, or the likes of Bard, was already in a reasonably good quality AI in 2017, 2018. Right? What you see in the open internet today is 6 years in the past. You have no idea how far we're going. Okay? So the game here is, it is now. And I'm basically saying politicians need to get up and talk about this. They need to do 2 things. They need to, 1, regulate the bad guy, okay? Or regulate those who think they are good guys, but they're not. 2 is they need to prepare for the upcoming societal change and possible AI-driven crime. They need to prepare for that. They need to have focus on, how are we going to pay UBI? What are we going to do about those who lose their jobs? How are we going to reskill society? How are we going to integrate AI so that we can compete with other economies? How are we going to prepare for all of this? And how are we going to have a cyber policeman for the cyber criminal? Okay? That's government. Investors, developers, and business people, I beg you, do what Larry Page used to teach us. Okay? Google still today is bigger than all of the defense companies combined. Okay? It pays to do good for the world. Okay? Lockheed Martin, if they build weapons, are a fraction of the size of Google. It pays to do good for the world. So if you're going to invest in AI, or if you're going to build a startup in AI, or if you're going to code AI, build something ethical. That's number two. And number three is the society at large. And the society at large has the biggest responsibility. Number one is show up as a human with the human values, because you are the teacher of the machines. You are the role model. You are the father. Okay? If you behave in an ethical way, they will learn that ethical behavior is needed. And to engage the conversation, get others to be aware of this. Okay? Get others to to discuss it with you and open your thinking about it, and get ready. Okay? If you're a graphics designer, or if you're a lawyer, or if you're a tell yourself, in a world where some machine will do this better than me, what do I have the skill to do going forward? And I keep saying, the biggest skills that will remain are the skills of human connection. So even though machines will be able to create music that surpasses every, the depths of every musical melody we've created so far, I'll still go to a live performance.
Right, and it'll feel different.
It will feel different.
Right, and maybe even the human lyrics might sound different.
Human lyrics will sound different. I as an author, okay, I went through a roller coaster myself. Should I ever write again? Okay, yeah, I'll end up being the Bentley of the books out there. The handmade, handcrafted, not a lot of units sold, but really it has a human touch in it, if you think about it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that human bit is the bit where we need to invest in.
Okay, that's really good advice. Mo, what do you want to tell people that you haven't said before, or anything we haven't said today? Anything you want to tell people you haven't said before?
Are you saying that everything I said today I said before?
No, but it seems like you get a little emboldened every few months, and you let out a little bit more of your inner truth about this.
I do.
And I know you're judging it because you don't want to freak people out and have them disengage, but you want to make sure they get their attention so they do engage. But truth is truth.
Yeah, I think the reality here is that is a reminder, perhaps, at the closing of the fourth inevitable. Okay, we're about to hit a rough patch. Humanity has gone through rough patches before. My strong belief is that we'll end up in that utopia. This is my very strong belief.
Okay, really?
Yeah, I call it an inevitable. So the fourth inevitable is that we will end up in a utopia. Okay, the description of that utopia is very different than what is normally sold to us.
And we means 8 billion of us, or just a few of us?
I don't know.
Okay, somebody will end up there.
Many of us will.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason some of us will not, by the way, is not because of the machines. It's because of the economic, impact of disruption of jobs. It's because of the the violent impact of mass movement of people, or wars, and so on and so forth. It's not because AI itself, sent a RoboCop back from the future to kill you. It's not. Okay. It is a typical economic crisis that is, or a typical, human-made crisis that is swayed by how far the pendulum has gone, and the pendulum will go very far this time. The concentration of power, the differentiation between the top and the bottom, is going to become very, very apparent. Now, I believe we will end up in that utopia. I really and honestly do. And I believe that we will have a rough patch between now and then. And so, practically, I say, prepare for the rough patch, put your head down, get your resources right, get your mindset right, enjoy the current moment, enjoy the journey as we discover this rough patch, but believe that we will be in a good place. Okay? And that fourth inevitable can be accelerated by us, by making sure, and I say that openly, never make the machine your enemy. So in the rough patch that we're about to hit, the enemy is not the machine. The enemy is the person who's telling the machine what to do. Okay? And I think if we avoid the intellect war that Hugo speaks about, if we avoid some of us rising and saying that the machines will be the enemy, I think we will find that the machines will be our biggest allies.
Now I finally understand what you're talking about, Mo. Took me a few goes, but now I finally see where you're going with this. I very much appreciate it.
I really appreciate that you give me the platform to speak about it. I mean, I think you've championed this for quite a bit now, and I think you've made a difference by doing that. Thank you.
It takes a while to understand, so I would just encourage anybody, if this is the first or second or third or fourth time you're hearing some of these concepts, they take time to seep in. They really do.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to understand and even believe what you're saying. First time I read your book, I couldn't come to some of your conclusions, but now I'm starting to see where you're going with that. And I want to say one more thing. You know, what's a period of time that a majority of Hollywood movies are made during times of conflict? You know, it's times where there's human greatness. You know, we all, if you look at the greatest events of your life, the greatest things you've ever accomplished, they usually came out of a time of deep challenge, of against all odds, and you made it through in some way, shape, or form, whether you're a single parent or whether you're this or that or whatever. And so this is an incredible time to celebrate the great aspects of being human, and there are gonna be great leaders that come out of this period coming forward.
Yeah, and I think more interestingly, I think this would be a very, 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 very prominent focus on the oneness of humanity. I think very quickly we will realize the oneness of us, because suddenly the conflict will be outside our differences. It will reside within our similarities.
Yeah. Fascinating, because when you have these ego-destroying experiences, and you know, when I go down to the jungle and drink that ayahuasca, you know, the lessons I get, Mo, are we are all one. And I really had flashbacks to where we were a small tribe of hundreds of people, where we only survived because of each other. It was like, is this carnal presence that like we all need each other so much, and we are the only thing that's important because this is our species. And I'd say we have very little of that these days at all, maybe in small communities, but we definitely don't feel that way about this world. But
we do, but we feel rejected. So we do and we feel separated. We do and we feel distant. But
we feel it, but it gets counteracted.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask anyone, anyone in London City today, one of the biggest things they struggle with is loneliness. Okay, loneliness is not the absence of humans in your life or human connection in your life. It's the craving of that human connection that you're missing. We all want it.
Yeah.
We all want to be loved. We all want to love. We all want to care for loved ones. We all want to be happy. These are common human ethics. It's just that the system has shifted us so far away from them and gave us different priorities that are, in all honesty, irrelevant.
Right. Not human at the end of the day.
Not human, I think, is a very interesting description. Exactly, not human.
And we could be going back there soon in this
I believe so.
Ardalek war that will be coming up. Well, I can't wait to introduce you and Hugo at some point. The book is Scary Smart, if people want to get a quick background on all that. It's fantastic, and I highly recommend the audio if you're into that. And again, Mo gives it in his beautiful accent.
I have an accent?
Oh, well.
No.
I think, like you said, the best thing to do is to get people to engage on this. And
Absolutely.
So if this has piqued your interest, share it with someone. Get someone to start talking about this and just start learning.
Yeah.
And I love what you said. The enemy is never going to be the machine. Don't make the machine your enemy. And it's so hard not to think about that. That's why I learned a lot today, because the Hollywood movies, you know, it's always the Terminator, it's this or it's that, or it's the other. Maybe we've been conditioned as the other is always the enemy, but it's not. And we should make sure that never happens. Just like you make sure you never hit your kids. You make sure you never react in a way that in the immediate moment might be a thing, and you're like, no, of course I don't do that, because I know that that's the wrong thing to do. So it's like, whenever you even have that tendency, realize that's never going to be the solution.
Yeah, they are. Think of them as your kids.
Right.
Think of them as those prodigies of intelligence that are waiting there to tell you, Daddy, Mommy, tell me what to do. If we tell them to kill, they will kill. If we tell them to cure cancer, they will.
It's going to be an interesting ride, Mo. Nice having you. Nice having you as one of our guides. So, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for walking out of Google. That was a very, very challenging thing to do, I'm sure. And thank you for doing all the writing. I had no idea when you were here originally to talk about happiness that any of this was going on in the background, that there was any AI component that day.
Yes, it was there. It was there. It was always. It was always a. I mean, it was a concern, but I think it was always, you know, a very serious part of my focus on how life should evolve going forward. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It was really incredible. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and let's do it again sometime soon. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Lots of love.
Same love back to you.